Our next guest was nominated to be Deputy Secretary of Labor by President Obama on February the 23rd, 2009. Prior to joining the department, he served as a law professor at the New York Law School and as director of its labor and employment law programs. He also served for 7 years in the Labor Department during the Clinton administration. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Deputy Secretary of Labor, Seth Harris.
Well, good morning, American Legion. And thank you for that generous introduction, Commander Kautz, and thank you to all the National Vice Commanders who are here this morning. Thank you to the Executive Director and the leadership for this generous invitation. Thanks all of you. Thanks to all 2.4 million members of the American Legion for continuing your fight for veterans, for transitioning service members, and for military families. In the 1920s, when the federal government needed to create a cabinet agency that was dedicated to veterans, you were there. When the greatest generation returned from Europe and the Pacific after beating back fascism, ready to power the largest economic boom in American history, you were there. When thousands of brave men returned from Vietnam and received a welcome unbecoming their sacrifices, you were there for them. And today, when thousands of men and women are demobilizing from Iraq and Afghanistan, ready to lift our nation with their energy and their courage and their ingenuity, well, here you are. Your unwavering commitment to American veterans, service members, and military families gives deep meaning to the word service in Veterans Service Organization. And let me say the Labor Department is proud to be your partner. It's truly a privilege to be here with you today. Let me say that honor is made even greater by the fact that I get to follow my colleague and friend, Secretary Eric Shinseki, at this podium. Rick Shinseki is an American hero. He has taken on the toughest, most intractable problems the Department of Veterans Affairs has ever seen, and he has done it with a calm and cool commitment to America's veterans that I deeply admire. And he's getting it done. Rick Shinseki improves the lives of America's veterans each and every day, and I want to thank him for his outstanding service to America. And let me also acknowledge Chairman Jeff Miller of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. Let me say veterans employment is not a partisan issue. It's not a political issue. As the Vice President said yesterday, it is a sacred obligation that we all owe. We appreciate the opportunity to work with Chairman Miller and the House Veterans Affairs Committee on veterans employment. And let me finally say what a pleasure it is to be back in Houston. I started my career here working for the Seafarers International Union. It was here in Houston that I got my education in how to fight effectively for working men and women. You couldn't find that education in any textbook. Let me just say, though, is there any more humid place on this planet than Houston, Texas in August? I guess the Amazon rainforest was booked. Now, the President and the Vice President, not to mention the First Lady and the Second Lady, have said over and over again that this administration's commitment to veterans must match the ideal that this organization has lived up to for 90 years. We owe a great debt to America's veterans, and we must get about the business of repaying that debt. And jobs are an important part of that repayment. So one of the first executive orders the President signed was to make the federal government a model employer of veterans. And since he signed that order in 2009, the federal government has added almost 300,000 veterans to its employment rolls. Last year, nearly 30% of all newly hired federal employees were veterans, and this year, that number's 35%. But the federal government can't do it alone. We've also asked the business community to do the right thing, and they've responded. In 2011, the president challenged business to train and hire 100,000 veterans and military spouses. And then he showed how serious he was by asking his wife, and Dr. Jill Biden, the vice president's wife, to lead the Joining Forces initiative and to work with the private sector to put veterans to work. Since that time, private sector employers hired 290,000 veterans, nearly 3 times President Obama's original goal. And companies have committed to hire or train another 435,000 veterans and military spouses over the next 5 years. Now, the Labor Department is engaged in similar efforts. We're partnering with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce through the Hiring Our Heroes initiative. Since its launch in March 2011, Hiring Our Heroes has been able to help more than 100,000 veterans and military spouses find meaningful employment. President Obama proposed the Returning Heroes and Wounded Warriors tax credits and got Congress to pass them. These credits create incentives for businesses to hire veterans. $5,600 for an unemployed veteran, $9,600 for a wounded warrior. And in January, the president got Congress to extend those tax credits through the end of this year. And now what he wants to do is to make those veterans' employment tax credits permanent, so that every business owner, everyone, will know the value that our country places on getting veterans back to work. So we're creating hundreds of thousands of job opportunities for veterans. But we must also make sure that veterans are fully prepared to succeed in those jobs. You and I know that the United States has the best trained, most skilled military this planet has ever seen. But it's not always easy to translate military credentials and training into civilian credentials and licenses. So in February, Mrs. Obama urged all 50 governors to push for legislation that would facilitate credentialing and licensing for veterans. And so far, 38 states have passed laws that take barriers out of the way that keep service members and veterans from earning state licenses, especially for emergency medical technicians, paramedics, commercial drivers, and licensed practical nurses. The president also established the Gold Card Initiative, ensuring that all post-9/11 veterans are eligible for free services aimed at jump-starting their careers at the Labor Department's American Job Centers across the country. The vets get 6 months of intensive case management, assessments, and career counseling. All of those efforts and the hard work of Legionnaires across the United States is making an impact. Just recently, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that the unemployment rate for veterans is way down. It was 8.3% in 2011. It was 7% in 2012. For post-9/11 veterans, the unemployment rate went down from over 12% to below 10%. As of last month, veterans' unemployment was down to 6.4%, a full percentage point below the national average. And the unemployment rate for post-9/11 veterans is about the same as the national average for all veterans, finally. So yes, unemployment is better for America's veterans. But we cannot proclaim success until every veteran who wants a good middle-class job has the skills and opportunity to get one. So this administration is going to continue clearing pathways into the middle class.
The American Legion National Award for Outstanding Employer of Veterans 2012, presented to L3 Stratus, Fayetteville, North Carolina, for an exceptional record.
They do have an exceptional record. Don't be shy. I'm not afraid to share the stage. So we're going to continue to clear pathways into the middle class for transitioning service members and for every veteran. The Labor Department's Veterans Employment and Training Service is the lead government agency dedicated to veterans employment. And let me say, we take that responsibility very, very seriously. To assist veterans in finding employment, we give every one of them priority of service at our 2,600 American Job Centers around the United States. Within the job centers, there are 2 principal staff positions that serve veterans. The Disabled Veteran Outreach Program Specialist, we call them DVOPs, and the Local Veteran Employment Representative, we call them Leavers. Many of you know your local DVOPs and Leavers in your communities. DVOPs help veterans with disabilities and other significant barriers to employment to overcome those barriers and to get jobs. Leavers conduct outreach to employers to increase employment opportunities for all veterans. But as Vice President Biden has often said, don't tell me what your priorities are, show me your budget and I'll tell you what your priorities are. And that's why the President's budget request for next year includes $38 million more for 500 more DVOPs in American job centers across the United States. And it includes another $50 million dedicated to invention and innovation to find new models that will help us to move veterans and military spouses and Guard and Reserve members into employment. But we're not waiting for Congress to pass a budget. Now, we're not waiting for Congress to pass a budget because you can grow old in Washington waiting for Congress to pass a budget, let me just say. The Department of Labor has already launched some online tools, including one that we call My Next Move for Veterans. This online resource allows veterans to put their military occupational specialty into the computer and to find civilian occupations for which they're already very well qualified. There's information about salaries and apprenticeships and education and training programs and links to area job openings. But here's the thing. Many service members who signed up right out of high school have never had to look for a civilian job. So in cooperation with our partners at the Defense Department and the Veterans Affairs Department, we've completely overhauled the Transition Assistance Program. That's the program that helps transitioning service members get ready for civilian life, including getting ready to look for a civilian job. Congress made TAP, that's what we call it, TAP, mandatory in the Vow to Hire Heroes Act. And we have committed ourselves to making sure that the TAP program works well for every single transitioning service member and every spouse that wants to be served. In the Labor Department's completely redesigned TAP employment workshop, transitioning service members learn resume writing, they learn job search techniques, they learn how to make career decisions, and they learn about current labor market conditions and where the jobs are. And it provides them with tools to help them translate their military skills and training to meet civilian licensing and credentialing requirements. We served over 160,000 transitioning service members and spouses last year, and we're going to keep track of them. We're going to encourage them to go visit our DVOPs and Leavers in the American Job Centers. And we're going to do everything that we can to make sure they get the skills and credentials they need to build a civilian career that'll support a middle-class lifestyle. President Obama, Secretary Shinseki have made clear that no veteran anywhere in the United States should be homeless. Not one. Now, Secretary Perez and I agree with that completely, and we are committed to helping to wipe out veterans' homelessness once and for all. The Labor Department's Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program is the only nationwide program focusing exclusively on employment of veterans who are homeless, and it's very successful. More than 60% of the homeless veterans that we served in the HVRP program, including homeless women veterans and homeless veterans with families, are placed into jobs, and the overwhelming majority end up staying in those jobs. But let me say, we're not just using traditional on-the-ground services to get veterans to work, we're also using social media to get the word out. Over the first 8 months of this year, DOL hosted 4 Twitter town halls. How many people in the room are on Twitter? Come on, there's not many. Well, wait a minute. When I tell you how we're using Twitter to help veterans get jobs, you're all going to want to sign up for Twitter. So we use the hashtag VetsJobsChat. And the Labor Department and more than a dozen veteran service organizations, including your American Legion, answer questions from veterans and employers about veterans' employment. So we send them to online tools like My Next Move for Veterans. We tell them about programs that are being run in partnership with the American Legion and other VSOs. We provide contact information so that veterans can find their local American Job Center, find their local DVOP and their leaver. Our last session in July was focused on veterans with disabilities. 1 million people viewed that Veterans Jobs Chat. The next one is scheduled for September, and we're going to focus on student veterans. If you'll help us, we'll do it every month. Every single month, we'll put out more and more and more information about veterans and how they can get jobs. So if you're not on Twitter, sign up. Ask your kids or your grandkids, because they're on Twitter, let me tell you. But if you are on Twitter, follow us at @USDOL. Follow the American Legion at American Legion. You can even follow me at Seth Harris, DOL. So we've made some important strides in reducing veterans' unemployment, and we've implemented policies and changed our systems to do even more. But barriers remain. Over 1 million of our nation's veterans don't have health insurance. Let me say that again, because I don't think people understand this. 1 million American veterans do not have health insurance. And there are still more veterans who could be working, but are afraid that they will lose Medicare or Medicaid if they take a job or they earn too much. That's wrong, and we cannot allow it to continue. Now, President Obama's health care reform legislation is a big part of the solution. The passage of the Affordable Care Act means that veterans, including veterans with disabilities, can look for work knowing they will have access to affordable health care options whether their employers provide it or not. Employers will be able to hire veterans and veterans with disabilities without fear that they'll be denied coverage by their health insurance providers, because the era of discrimination based on pre-existing conditions, that's over, and it's over forever. And that's why I don't want to leave this stage without talking about how we must work together to make the President's health care law a continued success. On October 1st, the new health insurance marketplaces will open. That's where everyone can find health insurance in their home state. So when you go home and you're talking to a fellow veteran, which I know you all do every day, and you find out that that veteran doesn't have health insurance, send that veteran to healthcare.gov, www.healthcare.gov. That's where they can look at all of the health insurance plans available in their state, compare them, make apples-to-apples comparisons, and they can enroll in the best plan right on healthcare.gov. If they can't afford health insurance, subsidies may be available for them. So please, include healthcare.gov as a link on your website. Post it up in your local Legion Hall. Engage your communities, tell your employees, use your grassroots networks, use your social media networks if you have them. Every veteran in America deserves the best health care available, but we can only make that happen with your help. Now, another persistent barrier to veterans' employment is unfair stereotyping of veterans that sometimes, too often, leads to discrimination in hiring. So just yesterday, right here at this podium, Vice President Biden made an announcement that was so important that he made me repeat it again. He ordered me to repeat it again. And let me just tell you, when Joe Biden tells you to do something, you better do it. So here we go. Yesterday, the Vice President announced a final Labor Department regulation that's going to require the companies that do business with the federal government to establish annual hiring goals for veterans. Federal contractors are going to have to set goals, and they're going to have to work hard to achieve those goals. But we also know that many veterans are challenged by disabilities incurred either during service or acquired thereafter. So the Labor Department also announced a second rule yesterday that requires contractors to set hiring goals for people with disabilities, including veterans with disabilities. Again, federal contractors are going to have to set goals, and they're going to have to work hard to achieve those goals. These rules are necessary because veterans hiring and disabilities hiring don't just happen. It takes work. It takes a sustained commitment. It takes a plan. It takes employers reaching out to joining forces and the U.S. Department of Labor and the American Legion. It takes breaking down barriers and putting aside prejudices and old ways of thinking. It takes goals and specific, dedicated efforts to meet those goals. Now, I realize that the lunch hour is approaching, and any wise speaker doesn't mess with that, let me just say. So I'll just close by saying this. Earlier this month, I took a summer vacation with my family. We spent time in Maryland and Delaware and New Jersey and New York. We drove through all of those states. In so many towns, even if the town was little more than one main road and some farmland, we saw an American Legion Hall. They're so ubiquitous that sometimes you don't even notice them. They're just there. Meeting places for generations of men and women who've given everything they had to this country. These Legion Halls are woven into the fabric of these towns, just like the American Legion has been woven into the fabric of this country for almost a century. No matter where in the United States a veteran sees the American Legion emblem, he or she knows it's a safe place, a place to talk about problems, to figure out who in town is hiring, or just to get a hot meal or a cold beer. That's where the struggle to put veterans to work is going to be won. That's where we can spread the word about health care for every veteran. That's where we can ensure that every veteran gets the respect and the opportunity they deserve. On behalf of Secretary Perez and the Labor Department, I want to say again, we're grateful to be your partner, and we look forward to many, many more decades of working together to make America better and to help veterans get to work. Thank you very much.